All right, and we're live. Thank you. Welcome everyone who's watching live. This is the Juju office hours for October 22nd. We're broadcasting at about 8 p.m. UTC. We're also available on YouTube afterwards. For those of you following along live, we're in #Juju in the IRC Freenode room. Feel free to ask questions there. Today I'm joined by several members of our ecosystems team. I'm going to let them all introduce themselves from left to right, starting with Chuck.
Greetings, name's Charles Butler, Juju Charmer. I work on the Juju ecosystem team. I primarily work on containers and developer tooling.
Cool, awesome, thanks. Also, we have Chris.
I'm Chris McNaughton, ecosystem team as well, primarily working on storage like Ceph and Gluster, monitoring tools as well as deployment.
Awesome. And we have Corey Johns.
Hi, I'm Corey Johns. I work on the big data charms.
And Kevin.
First of all, Corey Johns does way more than just work on the big data charms, but I'll let him slide with that. My name is Kevin Monroe. I work with Corey Johns on the big data charms.
And Matt.
Yep, my name is Matt Bruzek. I'm a Juju Charmer. I work on the ecosystems team on new workloads like Docker and Kubernetes.
Awesome. And I'm Marco Ceffi, work on the ecosystems team as well, working with developer experience and community and on the new workload stuff. Thanks for joining us. I think starting off, the most exciting bit is this is our first Juju office hours since the first Charmer Summit in Washington, D.C., which was a rousing success. Thank you for everyone who came. It was great meeting people from the community, great seeing what everyone was doing with Juju, the complex problems they're solving, and it was awesome to showcase a lot of the new cool stuff that we have for people writing charms and people consuming charms. I think we'll go through some of those today as well with everyone else. But also we'll take this opportunity to announce that we are having we already have planned our next Juju Summit. One of the biggest feedbacks we got was, what about everyone else in the rest of the world that's not in the U.S.? It's kind of hard to travel through to the U.S. So we're having a second Charmer Summit. It will be in Ghent, right outside of Brussels in Belgium, co-located within FOSDEM and Config Management Camp. So if you're already attending FOSDEM or Config Management Camp, we'll be right around those same days. It's a 3-day event, Monday through Wednesday, with a super dedicated, focused Juju track on Wednesday, which is the day after Config Management Camp concludes. So if you're looking for more information to sign up, to register, it's free. Just go to summit.juju.solutions and fill out now. I guess second as well in our docket of things on office hours is we've got a couple of new Juju releases that are landing, as well as a beta that's out. So I figured we'd go through real quickly to see what changes have come. Today, actually, just a few minutes ago, about an hour ago, I guess, Juju 1.24.7, which is a point/bug release for Juju, landed. A lot of fixes are in this one, especially around interacting with NAS and using Juju against certain providers. A big change here, notably, is that going forward, default instance types have changed. You'll no longer get on Amazon. You'll no longer get an M1.small, which are being phased out from AWS. You'll get an M3.medium, which is their recommended basic getting started instance size. And the storage provider has been put back behind a feature flag, as there is a lot of fixes that need to land that are landing in 125 and 126, but it's not quite ready for GA yet. So that's been put back behind a flag there. Otherwise, a bunch of bug fixes, which is great to see. Anything you guys want to cover that want to cover about the releases? Otherwise, we talked a little bit about the beta, but that's kind of boring.
I don't know that the beta is boring. There's a lot of interesting stuff coming up there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess it's a lot of exciting stuff. I would say it's boring because it's kind of hard to consume. It's not released yet. It's not as exciting as it could be.
Well, you're primarily representative of our collective interests recently. So from the container side of it, it's super exciting, and I'd actually like to show off one of the features today. It's called Payload Management and Monitoring. Avian images, LexD containers. We're now able to track these payloads and get a specific payload status output, which surfaces data to me as not only the charm author, but also the administrator of these services. It's nice to see everything that I'm running on that host and have that output to me in a way that I can track and monitor. Even have opportunities around scripting this to do some kind of information intelligence around it and seeing, like, plotting trend graphs. But that's all forthcoming, and I'll be happy to show that off whenever we get to the Chuck speaking section.
Well, since you're already speaking now, do you want to just keep talking about it?
Nope.
I'm excited.
I need 5 more minutes and I'll be ready.
All right, fine. We'll just tease him into it then. What other cool stuff is coming out in the beta that you guys are excited for? Anything cool that tickles your fancy, New York do Big Data team? Just another awesome stable release?
Yeah, I got nothing. I'm ill prepared for that remark.
Yeah, I'm not really aware of any features that are specifically going to be useful for the big data. Well, this storage, once that becomes more stable, we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's also, so storage is one thing that it's going back GA in 125. A lot of fixes were landed by the core team to get that in better shape for providers. But there's also this new command called Spaces, or a new concept called Net Spaces. Is that something you guys are interested in using, or if not, I could talk about it a little bit. What it is as far as a feature.
No, you should talk about it. I'm not.
Okay, no worries, no worries. I'm just gonna keep putting people on the spot.
So, Marco, what are network spaces?
Thanks, Chuck. Yeah, so network spaces are the ability to manage at a high level how you isolate services from each other and from the public net. This is you managing things like subnets. It's also to give it analogous to something that you would use in production. This is basically VPC support in Juju across our cloud providers. So it's exciting to be able to model all of that kind of isolation of networking, the ability to map subnets in different isolations. So we're calling these spaces, so you can build the idea of we have a public space, we have a back-end database space, we also have an application space, and then bridging what subnets map to each of those so that theoretically you could completely isolate your database layer offline altogether, but give it access to your application subnet, which then has access to the public space, which is where you run maybe a load balancer or something else. So bringing that to the Juju model is a pretty exciting thing. I know I'm super pumped to see how that fleshes out. And the way I understand it, it should be very minimal impact to people who are already running charms today, which is also super cool. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, I thought I timed out for a second. So that's also coming in 124. I mean, sorry, 125. Is there anything else I'm missing that's exciting? 125. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff that's being worked on all the time. I know we just had a sprint and we talked about a lot of cool stuff that's coming, but some of it's in 125, some of it's in 126. Hard to discern which one's coming in which. Yeah, I think that's all I've got for releases and stuff. Does anyone want to highlight, showcase anything they have want to share with the group?
You bet. Actually, I'm going to share my screen for a little bit, Marco. We're going to talk about some of the new charming stuff that, or the charm tooling that Corey and Ben have been working on over this last cycle. First of all, hats off to them. And before anybody really understands why, it'd probably be better if I actually show you why this is awesome. Make sure that I have that out of the way. All right. So as we've all seen traditional charms and what they look like. If you haven't, I am going to go into this Kubernetes charm, and let's tree this. And this is a basic structure of a classic charm. What's interesting about this is we are modeling everything that is kind of tied to the Juju model. And you have to have kind of a deep prerequisite understanding of how hooks are run, what those events look like, and how this works out. So in my charm repository, typically you would just see series. I'm now introducing new folders, one of which is layers. And this is super interesting to me because this allows me to do something interesting. So let's drop right into a charm that I'm familiar with, and let's take a look at this. Now, the first thing you might notice is, wow, this just got really skinny. I don't see a hooks folder. I see a few things that are not very obvious to me what they are. Like I see this reactive directory. And I do see some familiar things, though. Like I have a metadata. I have a configuration, or I would have a configuration.yaml if it was in here. But there's also this, which should be layers.yaml. I apologize, I'm running an older build of charm tools. But The first bit is that I have this layer basic, which is super interesting. So historically, we had to charm create. We would specify a template type, and it would spit out a bunch of boilerplate. And I would go in and I would edit that boilerplate. And that was a pretty decent way to get started. But now it's gotten even more streamlined to where, with this single file of just including basic, it's going to take this bit of code that I have right now, and this would be charm build, but in this particular build of charm tools, it's charm refresh. I'm going to tell this to spit out to my Juju repository. And it's going to go through, and what's happening right now is it's actually assembling a charm using different layers. So what's awesome about this is that there was no generation point. I didn't have to charm create tac t, edit boilerplate. I just started charming through the things that were interesting to me, and we can validate this by, let's drop into this charm. And we see that everything that we would expect to see in our charm is here. We have all of our staple hooks, and those have gotten even skinnier too. So if I edit the hooks config change, I'm going to see that it's just a few lines where we're importing the lib directory for the shipped dependencies, and we also have this charm.reactive, and it just runs this main function. What's interesting about this is actually encapsulated in the comments above, where we tell you how to get started with this new pattern, and it also tells you exactly what it's doing. That it's looking in the reactive directory, hooks reactive, and hooks relations. So a little more on that coming up. If I edit the reactive directory, so this first concept that we've just introduced is what's being called charm build. This allows me to take multiple components and create a charm out of it. I'm actually going to extend this. We're going to make this charm even more interesting by putting in layer swarm. And this will turn my Docker charm into a swarm charm. So I'm just going to rebuild my charm, and that's fine. It's telling me that I had a file in my generated charm that it didn't know what to do with, so I'm just going to force override it. So whenever you see these yellow lines, this is effectively a warning, and typically it's due to pulling in dependencies that are already detected that the base layer doesn't know about. I'm going to say that 9 times out of 10, it's okay to go ahead and add a force flag and override that. So we see that it pulled in a few other bits. One thing that I see here is that it's pulled in layer swarm, which is something that I expected. But one thing that wasn't terribly obvious is that it's pulled in the interface of etcd. So I now know that my swarm layer has a dependency on etcd in order to deploy, which this is super cool. I didn't have to write any additional code for this. And if I retree the directory, I see that it's pulled in this swarm.py. And also, if I scroll up, page up here, underneath, because I stopped it at 2. So let's do this for just tree the hooks directory. See that now I have an etcd set of files here, and it's telling me that it's implementing all these different particular files. This is what's called relation layers, and what's nice about this is that it's dictating how the conversation flow is going to happen. So historically, you had to look in a hook, interface layers, and you had to dig into the charm code and kind of figure out what's being sent over the wire, either through relation set or, worst case scenario, you trap the hook execution and take a look at it. But what's really nice about this is that now I can just drop it into this file, etcd. Typically, the README is going to tell me exactly what I need. So pretty basic README. I just whipped this up last week. I haven't had a chance to return to it, but it tells you exactly what's happening. It returns a connection string formatted for the etcd cluster. So let's actually take a look at the code. And we will look at requires. And what we have in here is that we're including some reactive bits. So keep that fresh in your mind, reactive. The other side of this is we're creating a class, and it's inheriting from relation base, which comes up from reactive. And there's this line here about scopes. So this is telling me that anything that connects to this etcd charm is going to receive the exact same information that is sent to the last host. The other bits to this is that we have some nice decorators now. Looking at the format, this looks very familiar to what we've had before, but we've got some nice new flair here of the templatizing of what's actually happening. So this requires etcd. It's a macro that's going to be replaced with whatever you implement this relationship as. So let's say I called it db, and it's using the interface of etcd. This would now respond to hooks db relation joined and changed. The same thing whenever it actually departs. And the rest of it is just internal code for actually generating that connection string and sending that back over the wire. So if I look at the reactive directory, And let's take a look at Docker first. Docker's pretty simple. We just run through. We have something very familiar to us. We have a hook decorator that's telling us this will run during install. And then we set some status. We have this new thing that's called reactive set state. So I asked you to remember reactive. Now let's bring that back. And reactive is the new framework to write charms in. It's basically the successor to the services framework, which was very nice in setting dependencies whenever you have a distributed application. What reactive does is that it gives you persistent states that you can set across layers or in the same layer, and now you can respond to these events. So since I set the state of docker.available, I have the state down here for @when docker.available. Super nice is that this will run when that state arises, and it will not run when user.modified is set. And as you can see, we set that state on the very last line of the file here. So it's not going to attempt to modify the Ubuntu user and add them to the Docker group more than once that state has been set. So if we edit swarm, you can see that this goes even a step further. We look at the etcd interface layer, and it raises an event of etcd.available. Now that's defined in our metadata. And we see here that it requires an etcd of interface etcd. So that's where we're getting that bit. The other side of that is, well, already look at the file. So let's just drop right back, keep on going. So we also have a qualifier to not run this when swarm is available. And what's interesting is that we set that, and this is all very natural. I now have domain-specific language to kind of communicate my intent to the user as well as to the system of what's happening, when this should occur. And it's not scoped in just a hook context. This is now available throughout the global runtime of the charm, which is super nice. So I've already taken the liberty of deploying the base Docker charm. Now that I've permutated it, or now that I've updated it with the swarm layer, let's Juju upgrade charm Docker. We're going to see some interesting things happen. It's going to change the messaging of this service, and it's also going to immediately add those relations that we just added. With only 15 characters, it's actually added the modules for installing Docker Swarm and made those primitives available to my charm, as well as those relation states that I can subscribe to, and I can layer on top of this and then go a step further and actually deliver a workload on top of this. So while this stands up, this is going to take a little bit of time. I'm going to go ahead and switch off while this runs the deployment. It's going to take about 3 minutes. So if somebody else has something that they would like to cover in that time, I'm happy to have you come back to me.
Yeah, I'd just like to jump in real quick and maybe try to give an executive summary of what the layers and the reactive stuff that you're talking about. I just wanted to note that essentially what this allows us to do with charm build is to break charms apart into reusable layers, including interface layers that kind of encapsulate the base logic, base code to handle that relation or that framework, say the Docker framework, and then it allows you to break those up, and reuse those pieces. A persistent event system or a state system that allows you to easily communicate between the layers by setting and removing events or states, and yeah, it makes interacting between the layers pretty clean. It makes your code a lot more declarative on these are the conditions that I am responding to, reacting to. When my charm gets into this state, this is what I need to do, as opposed to trying to manage that state across multiple hooks and having to do all that state management manually. It's kind of handled by the state system of the reactive framework.
I honestly couldn't have said it better myself. High five.
Straight from the horse's mouth.
Right?
So I think what's important is that we're very much, a lot of the ecosystems team as a whole, I'm speaking for them, and if they so disagree, they can speak up. But we all pretty much have come to the consensus that this is basically way better way to write charms than what we've ever previously come up with. It's much more concise, it's much simpler to maintain and iterate over time with. So this is basically the way that we're going to be telling people to write charms in the future. So what's great about the framework is it's very light, it's very easy to consume. It's also not language specific, so it still ties into that beautiful pain point that a lot of people have is like, well, what do I write charms in? And it's like, you write them in any language. Now you can write charms with reactive, but still in any language. There's shell handlers as well as a Python library, as Chuck showed. And with the shell handler, anyone could theoretically create a shim to translate a language to reactive. We're going to be promoting as either Bash or Python as the best way to start writing these layers. And because of the way that the charm build process works and the way the reactive framework is built, you can actually mix and match layers of different languages. We haven't really tried it much past Shell and Python, but theoretically you should be able to do it with any of them. And we're also rewriting the majority of our charm author docs to use this workflow instead. I should make sure that it's also clear that while this is the best way to build charms going forward, it is still very much a build process, and the artifact of that build is a traditional charm that people have come to see and learn and love these last couple of years. So if you're writing and maintaining charms that are currently producing the format that we're generating, that's not a problem at all. If you're maintaining and writing code for hooks, that's not going to go away anytime soon. This is simply just a way to make it easier for authors to maintain the layers they care about and mix in layers from other experts, much like what charms tend to achieve to do in a deployed environment by mixing and matching the best practices and operational knowledge from all these different people and string those components together. So expect in the next coming week or two much better docs around this. We have a couple of stellar blog posts in the community that highlight this now. We have this session as well. We had a couple dedicated sessions at our Charmer Summit in Tyson's Corner, DC area last month. We'll be doing this again. We'll be speaking really heavily about this pattern, best practices around it, again in the summit coming up in February in Ghent. So if you're really interested in learning about this stuff, getting a hands on it, you can do it now. It's available. There's a new release of Charm Tools coming out today, which has a bunch of bug fixes in this pattern, and we'll be talking about it and promoting it as a best practice going forward for all people looking to write charms.
So, just kind of an add-on there, Marco. One thing that I really want to drive home is that what's really nice about this is that if you're working on a software project and you're defining that interface layer, you're basically handing anybody that wants to communicate with your service a free ticket to just go ahead and consume that data and integrate. Some of you may remember that we just added an etcd relationship to the Docker charm to kind of expose that. I went ahead and deployed etcd, and we updated that Docker charm, and we also see that it's updated the messaging now where it's pending an etcd connection for Swarm. If I Juju add relation, Docker and etcd, I didn't have to do anything other than just include that and make sure that I consumed the data that was coming out of that interface. I didn't have to worry about how this should be done, what data points are necessarily coming back. Like, all of this was already defined for me. I just consumed it, used that data, and life was good. And at this point, it's gone through. It's updating Docker. It's starting Swarm. It's reconfiguring the daemon, and life is good. Like, everything happened. I'll just 15 characters of text, and I got instant connectivity with this and was able to return and working with etcd and firing up Swarm. So that's what I had.
Awesome. Thanks for the demo, Chuck. It's really exciting to see. Please keep emailing the list. We have a list of interfaces and interface layers and charm layers that we've already created at interfaces.juju.solutions for new layers, which is really exciting to see. So it's good that people are seeing the path forward with this. They're kind of recognizing the ease, the maintainability, and so it's very exciting to see. Thanks again, Chuck, for the demo. Does anyone else have anything they want to show and tell, or any other comments?
I just want to add one quick note to that. Interfaces.juju.solutions. I'd like to point out that anybody with a Launchpad login can add interface or add layers to that. So it's very much already community driven, and we would like submissions for that. Absolutely.
Awesome. Anyone have any show and tell? Anything else you want to chat about?
I started talking about payload management. I don't have a good demo set up for this. I've got a single container. Matter of fact, if you read my blog, blog.dasroot.net, or if you're following Insights, it'll eventually make its way there too as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that. That's a brand new feature that's surfacing in 125 beta 2.1. I would also like to give a big shout out to the Moonstone team for working with me hand in hand to get that delivered and make sure that it's exactly what we wanted.
Could you just give a high level what the payload management stuff is? I can't remember if we talked about it already.
You betcha. So to cover this again is that payload management and monitoring. So whenever you're delivering a charm that has a payload attached to it, maybe it's a KVM virtual machine that is launching, say, an old school firewall that you paid for. That's a terrible example, but maybe it's a Docker container. Maybe it's a LexView workload that you've got vetted and everything stands up and everything works perfectly every time. What the payload management monitoring allows you to do is you now have hook tools that are exposed to you to actually register these services. And then you can surface that data back to the administrator whenever they run Juju list attack payloads. It will show all of the services listed, what the current state is, and what the running PID or serialized ID in the case of Docker, what the Versh machine is, things of that nature. So that way you as the administrator have insight into what's actually running on that machine whenever the service itself is interesting, but also the payloads that are making up that service. Because it's not always apparent that a single service might be comprised of 5 microservices, for example. What this has done is it's giving you the ability to register that and track them outside of just a normal Juju status. It's Juju list payloads, and that's available as of 125 beta 2.1.
Awesome. Thanks for that as well. Anyone else have anything they want to share and tell? Show and tell? Big Data, you guys have anything exciting in the pipeline? Matt? Chris? Anyone have any questions out there? If you're watching again, pound Juju. We'll take your questions as well.
Yeah, so I don't have any show, but I've got to tell. And it's fresh on my mind today because our team does we put our time in the review queue on Thursday mornings. So this morning I was reviewing a charm from IBM related to their IBM Java 9 or Java 1.8 J9 SDK, or I forget what the version string is. But it was interesting to me because we have a different Java from a company called Azul Systems. It's Zulu 8, and it's already promulgated into the store. But it's interesting that these two companies took two different approaches, right? Azul Systems used the concept of a subordinate charm, where if you have a Java workload or something that's going to use Java, like Tomcat, for example, we typically would install the OpenJDK, but Azul is giving you the option to replace that with their JDK, and so at a workload level, their JDK is installed on the system, and it runs with that. So that's all well and good, but IBM took a different approach, and they have their service charmed as a primary service. So when you deploy the IBM JDK, it goes out on a single unit. I mean, I thought that was interesting for a couple of reasons, because IBM has a lot of different architectures. So with one charm, you could say deploy the IBM JDK, and depending on what substrate you're on, you might deploy that to Power or deploy that to x86 or whatever other platform that their JDK is there for. So I see IBM, their good use case being if you're a Java developer and you want to verify that your application is running, it's pretty helpful just to go deploy a system somewhere in the cloud and be able to throw your jars on it and run it in that JDK. So it just struck me as a different approach Java onto a unit is something I hadn't thought about. And the outcome of that is that now Azul and IBM and Canonical are going to meet next week to sort of define a standard JRE interface and perhaps even a JDK interface, and what kind of information will be passed, right? Do we share certain jars? Do we share compile flags? Expose what Java or JRE options are available? Maybe memory tuning or things like that. Obviously, something like Java Home would be a good option for the relation to have. So again, I don't have anything to show, but my tell is just that I got to see the yin and the yang of two different approaches to solving a third-party JDK or Java environment on a unit. I thought it was pretty interesting.
That's pretty awesome, actually. Thanks for sharing. I imagine whatever outcome you guys kind of do when you meet, you'll be updating us on the list so we can kind of follow along about what the plan is for anyone who's implementing potentially a different Java binary, how they could load that into charms?
Yeah, you bet.
Sweet. Cool. Anyone have anything else for showing or telling or both? Cool. I think that about brings us up. I'll leave a few more minutes if anyone has any questions. Again, we're in pound Juju in Freenode. I had a couple questions earlier, but I think we may have answered them in the process of our show and tell sessions. The one question I got is about one question that we haven't answered yet comes from BDX about a bug that he raised in our OpenStack configurations. I took a look at it while Chuck was getting us in there. This is bug 1508575. It's something to do with how HA in OpenStack is being run through our charms and how VIPs aren't being assigned to certain bridges. I haven't the slightest idea of how to address this one. I did ask the OpenStack guys, though. They're taking a look at it for you. But thanks for bringing it to our attention. In other news, our 15.10 OpenStack charms just dropped, so we have native Liberty support now out of the box when you deploy any of our Juju charms for OpenStack configuration, which is pretty exciting. Next week is ODS in Tokyo, where we'll be talking about the ODS, the OpenStack M release, which is nicknamed Mataka. So we'll be there as well. All of the OpenStack charmers will be there. So if you have questions about charms or OpenStack, Ubuntu OpenStack architecture, and you're in Tokyo for the conference, please come find us. Flag us down. We'll have a booth. We have a Rue will be doing talks in as well. So come and drop on by. Otherwise, I don't think there's any other major events upcoming outside of that and the Charmer Summit. Any other last remarks? Any other show and tells from you guys? Any questions in chat? Feel free to drop them in now. Otherwise, we'll be convening again in a couple of weeks. Cool. I don't see anything else, so thank you everyone for watching. If you're following along at home, we'll have notes sent out to the mailing list as well as key things we covered. If you have any questions about Juju or you want to see something covered in office hours, you can always join us live, chat with us. We're happy to hang out with you. Also, you can email our mailing list, juju@lists.ubuntu.com. Find out more about Juju at jujucharms.com. See what we're up to at our for our solutions pages at juju.solutions. And always find us in IRC in #Juju in Freenode on irc.freenode.net. And any questions you may have that you don't want to post to any of those other mediums, there's always Ask Ubuntu. I think that's it. Thank you everyone for joining. We'll see you all in a couple weeks.
Cheers, everybody. Marco.